Thank you.
How to get out of my system now.
We're live on YouTube.
Oh, even better. Are we standing for the pledge?
No, we don't have a flag.
Hmm.
I'll work on that for next
Yeah,
month.
next time, let's get a flag.
We could pretend. I have a red wall. I'll bring the flag in from my outside next time.
I'll check the Zoom backgrounds. There are a lot of them. There's probably a flag in there. So
Oh, you're right. I haven't been able to figure out how to do that.
LMC has a flag.
Okay, we're ready to go live on TV. So whenever you're ready, you may start the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting or somewhat irregular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Larchmont. Today is Monday, April 20th. Let the record show that the entire board is present. We also have joining us on screen Administrator Justin Dottino, Treasurer Kimberly Gutwine. This evening, we are having a meeting by video conference. I want to let you know that this is pursuant to Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1. The meeting is being recorded. It is also being live broadcast on LMC TV and live streamed on LMC's YouTube channel. In addition, many members of the public may have joined us through this Zoom link. That will allow them to speak when we get to the public hearing portion of the meeting. If you are on here to make comment or ask questions during the public hearing, when we get to that point and I open the hearing, please click on the raise your hand button, the raise hand button. When we see that your hand has been raised, we will unmute you and you will be able to speak with us. We'd like to thank LMC TV for making it possible to live broadcast this Zoom board meeting. Well, it has been just about a month since our last board meeting that was held in Village Hall. We had a couple of members with us and we were all sitting very spaced out in a new configuration. And, you know, at that point, I believe, you know, the shops were just about being shut down and the enormity of the change that was coming was breaking on all of us. And now here we are, what, 4 or 5 weeks into this process. We know that we have at least another 4 weeks of New York pause ahead of us because the governor has already set the deadline, the next deadline for May 15th. But we've been working hard, all of us and in the village, to keep village government up and running, to continue to provide the essential services that are necessary in the village. And as you'll see, as we get through the agenda, we have continued to work on the village budget and some other items of interest to our village. The first priority for all of us has been the health and safety of our residents and our village staff. We have made changes in the functioning of Village Hall and the way we are working with our employees to protect them. We've also made changes within the village in terms of closing playgrounds and really emphasizing the need for social distancing. At this point, I'd also like to emphasize the need for wearing masks and face coverings. Governor Cuomo put into place a new executive order that became effective Friday night that whenever possible in public, you should be wearing a face mask or a face covering that covers your mouth and your nose. That can be something like a bandana. If you are in a position where you cannot social distance, you must have that on. I think, and he agrees, and has stated that you basically should take your mask with you whenever you leave the house. You can have it in a pocket, or you can have it on and have it under your chin, because you never know when somebody's going to get too close to you on the sidewalk, or when you may need to walk into a bank or some other shop or retail place, or get on a bus, or maybe hop in a cab, or any other place where you're going to be in tight circumstances. You need to be able to put that mask up. If you're out walking and you're on some of the busier streets in the village, like Larchmont Avenue, heading towards Manor Park on a nice sunny day, it gets crowded. And we do try, or I've seen it, I walk, you know, some people go to the left, some go to the right, you walk down the middle of the street, everything that you can do to try to keep that distance between you. But invariably, there are just a lot of people on the sidewalk and heading towards the park. You are going to, at some point, come in less than 6 feet from those people. Pop the mask on your face, just keep it on. It's just a good practice. I have a feeling that this is the way that we are being sort of being trained to become used to the need for masks, because this may very well become part of the protocol that helps us move out of pause and start to slowly bring things back to normal. So everyone should get in the habit. It's not just for your own protection, it's really for the protection of the people around you. And if we can stop the spread of this virus, save some lives, the faster we do that, the faster we can start figuring out ways to start, you know, to bring things back to what is going to be the new normal. Construction has been mostly shut down by the governor's orders. Landscaping services have been limited to only those which are deemed essential for sanitation and safety. So regular lawn cutting is fine, but no new plantings, no major landscape redos. None of that is acceptable. In the village, I issued an executive order which banned all types of leaf blowers, gas-powered, electric-powered, hamster-powered, I don't care what they are, they're all banned for all purposes. And that's because while we are on pause, everyone is home, working from home, the kids are home, they're being schooled online, and to have the constant disruption throughout the day of leaf blower noise is really more than we need to add to anyone's plate at this point in time. If you have any questions or concerns or comments about activities you see that you're not sure if they're acceptable, or you know that they're not and you would like to point it out to someone, please email codeenforcement@villageoflarchmont.org. You can also go to the Contact Us button on the village's website, and you can click the button for code enforcement, and the message will go to the code enforcement officer, who will look into your issue. He may respond to you, or he may just go and take action. We get a lot of emails these days, so we can't necessarily say that we'll be able to respond to each and every one, but we do attend to every issue that comes before us. Elections. They were originally going to be March 18th, the date of our last board meeting. They were postponed to April 28th. They have been postponed again to sometime after June 1st. At this point, that's all we know. We don't have a date. We don't have a process. We're still waiting for that information to come from Albany. As soon as it comes, we will send out an email blast and we will put it up on the village's website. That brings me to my next point. Please sign up on the village website for email notices. You can go on the website homepage and click the light blue button called Village News and sign up. A lot of our communication is done through email blasts. You know, some days we have quite a few notices to go out. Some days we don't really have anything. I don't want to be robocalling your house 3 times a day. You probably don't want to hear me either. So sign up for email notifications. It'll be the best way for us to be able to communicate with you. Also, please check the village calendar on the village website for information on meetings. Tonight is our first village board meeting via Zoom. Tomorrow evening, the planning board will be meeting also via Zoom video conference. And the information on how to participate in that meeting is all found on the village calendar. So just keep checking in on that occasionally. Finally, even though we are in the midst of this coronavirus crisis, we are still also in the middle of the Census 2020. And it's never been more important for us to get the full account of how many residents we have living in this village. So much of the state and federal funding that comes to the village is based on the numbers from the census. And every person who is not counted means we lose $2,500 per year, every year for 10 years. In addition to that, our sales tax portion is meted out based on a per capita basis. So if we are undercounted, we will receive much less sales tax. You're going to hear later when we get to the budget presentation that we are going to have some real financial stress because of the after effects of this crisis. And one of the things that are going to be most affected is sales tax. So let's do what we can to make sure we get our fair share and make sure everyone goes to census2020.gov and completes the census for their household. The last thing I want to say during this portion is I just want to thank all of the village staff for being extremely flexible, adapting to new ways of working, new protocols to follow, and really being very attentive and I think compassionate with a lot of the residents who've been calling, who need help, who have questions, who are just, you know, really struggling at this point. And I thank them for that. It's really important. It helps when you have someone that you can reach out to at the local level. Now, next up, appointments to commissions and committees. Let me just, before we even get into that, this is the first time we're holding a meeting like this. And if at some point during the next hour, we hit a couple of bumps and a few glitches, I hope you will bear with us and don't judge us too harshly. We've all had to learn a lot of new tricks over the last few weeks in figuring out how to conduct our business remotely. We have an appointment to the Larchmont Environmental Committee. And so I'm going to turn this over to Trustee Bauer, who is the liaison to that committee, and she can introduce this individual to us.
Yes, I'm very excited to appoint Alana Murray to the Environmental Committee. She spent quite a few years as an editor at Green Source magazine. She has a lot of expertise in the area of green building, and I think she would be an excellent addition to the committee. Do I make the motion?
No, I'll seek a motion to appoint her, and you will?
So moved.
Good. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Carol's muted for some reason.
Not
Well,
muted now. That was an
okay.
aye.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to Alana for volunteering. And again, this village is primarily, in many ways, run by volunteers. All of our committees, including the one in front of you today, the Board of Trustees, unpaid volunteers who work really hard to get all the things done in the village and to attend to some of the issues like the environment that our residents really care about. We're going to be getting to a couple of environmental issues later on in the agenda. But for now, we are on agenda item number 3, public hearings. And for this, Rob, if you wouldn't mind unmuting Paul Silverman, John McGar. I only see John McGar actually on here.
Michael Gottfried.
Nope. Thank you. Let me do, yeah, Paul Silverman is there. I see Paul now. Paul Silverman and John McGar. John McGar is on, okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. I think that's it. I don't see Ian and I don't see Jeremy. Unless I'm missing something. All right, thanks. Thank you for bearing with us. It's a little technical issues we have to deal with here. So I'm going to ask Justin Dettino, the village administrator, to run through his presentation on what we're calling the tentative budget version 2.0. And while he goes through that, the board and finance committee members, and those are the people we just unmuted, Paul Silverman and John McGar, can ask any questions or make comments. When he is finished, I'll open the public hearing, and anyone else who is participating in the Zoom meeting will be unmuted and can ask any questions or make any comments that they wish to make. So I'll turn it over to Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, we've been working on the budget process for quite a while. At our last meeting on March 18th, we presented a tentative budget at that time. However, that budget process really started in late 2019 and progressed through January and February. By the time we were ready to present the tentative budget on March 18th, the corona pandemic was just really starting to unravel. So at that point, we had to present and file a tentative budget by March 20th, which we did. But we left with a very large asterisk in that we would be working through revisions to that budget in the ensuing weeks, which we have been. And I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation momentarily that will go through the various steps and analyses that we've been performing by we, it's the village board, the finance committee and staff, in terms of developing a responsible and relevant budget considering the real impact of the COVID-19 pandemic as it pertains to the village's financial future. So just give me a second. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint and share my screen. Okay. Oh. Okay, I have the slideshow up. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so as we said, this is tentative 2.0. Just in way of context, by New York State village law, the village has to file through its budget officer a tentative budget no later than March 20th, at which case if that budget process does not result in an adopted budget by May 1st, then the tentative budget becomes the budget for the next fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs from June 1, 2000, in this case 20, through June 1, 2021, excuse me, May 31 of 2021. So the budget we're discussing now will take into effect in June. Just by way of perspective, 75% of the revenue that we take in to run the village's operations comes through the property tax levy. That's again 75%. 25% of that is from non-property tax items. Those are items such as sales tax, mortgage tax, court fines, building permit fees, and other revenue sources that the village collects, in this case, 25% of its operating expenses revenue on. In prior years, as you can see by this graph, the village has used some of its surplus, also known as fund balance, to balance the next year's budget. It's often done in the context of tax relief. The village runs a very tight operation. If we find ways to either cut expenses or bring extra revenue, if our fund balance is in a healthy place, which I'll explain in the following slide, some of that money is returned to the taxpayers through the use of fund balance to balance the following year's budget. In the course of 10 years, 7 out of the 10 years, the village has adopted a budget through some application of fund balance. Last year, or the current fiscal year that we're in, 1920, we did not. And in 2021, we were proposing not to use any fund balance to balance the budget, and we're going to continue that. The theory being that while we're using the best practices and the best information that we have available to us, that's such resources at the New York State Government Financial Officials Association, the Westchester County Budget Office, as well as our own experience with how village finances tend to fluctuate, there is still a great degree of uncertainty how things will resolve or not resolve over the next weeks and months. So in preparing next year's budget, there was a consensus among the group that while we may be very good and very close, if there is a variable to chance, the village's fund balance will be able to accommodate some further drop in revenues if that be the case. So again, over the course of 10 years, 7 of the 10, we've used significant money to balance the budget. In 3 years, we're proposing not to. The fund balance numbers, and I'll ask Kimberly to jump in if I need some clarification. But the fund balance, again, is the money that the village budgets for that then drops to our, let's call it, savings account if it doesn't get expensed. And again, this can happen from either two reasons. We have additional revenues that come in that we were not originally budgeting for, or expenses come in less than budgeted for, at which case the net result of that, if it's surplus, will fall to our fund balance. As of the close of 2018-19, there was just over $3 million in our total fund balance. Now, our fund balance has various categories, either for payments that need to happen that we're booking for that haven't been made yet, or things items that we're anticipating needing money for that we're not in a position to pay for yet. So although there are a variety of categories, you can look on the one side of the spectrum as having 3.1 million in your fund balance, and on the most least restrictive form of that would be 2.5 million. Based on that, the village assigns a percentage, or it becomes a percentage of our fund balance to the annual operating expenditures. For local governments, there's a range, and most places, and GATSB, which is the Government Accounting Standards Bureau, rating agencies, et cetera, look for a fund balance of 12 to 15%. And that's considered a healthy fund balance. At this point, we're approximately 18%. So we're a little extra to the good. So just to reiterate, the current fiscal year, we used $0 out of our fund balance to balance the budget. Although, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, we will be hitting our fund balance, so to speak, because of a significant drop in revenues. That's going to be a factor of closing out this budget year. And Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind jumping in, early on, it's too close to tell with any finite degree, but the approximate amount of fund balance that you think will be hit this year in the current fiscal year as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the loss of revenues?
The net, we did have some surplus, so the net effect of that was about $180,000.
Thank you. And if you looked at the prior graph, we've budgeted as an application of fund balance between $150,000 and $300,000 a year. So while $180,000 does sound like a lot of fund balance to hit, it's actually in line with what the village has prudently budgeted for in years past when it needed to do so.
That is correct.
In 2021, again, we're proposing to adopt a budget, or at least put a budget together that, again, initially calls for no use of fund balance. But as I mentioned on the last bullet, if things don't pan out to the degree we expect them to, or hope they will, or have at least determined they may through, again, our various channels, fund balance is one alternative to further cuts in services, staffing, and expenses that may be used to fill that gap if revenues do not come in as projected. So again, at March 18th, the tentative budget was prepared. We prepared it knowing what we knew at the time. And we had at that time, a proposed 1.5% increase on the tax levy to balance the budget. And we were counting on these revenue categories being where they were and where they had been prior to sustain that budget. What we've realized since then in talking to again, New York State Government Finance Officers Association, the Westchester County Office of the Budget, coordinating with other villages who are right now preparing their budget, as are we, we've made some educated cuts to these revenue categories. We've made them with certain assumptions, again, that we've derived from higher levels of government than ourselves, and also knowing how we tend to see our revenue streams coming in on a year-to-year basis, and looking at our actual numbers, not just our historical budget numbers. And again, the difference is we may say we're going to collect $300,000 in mortgage tax, but when we look back at our actual collections, they may be higher or less than our budget projections, in which case we should maybe take a different track into account, in which case in some of these revenue categories we did, that being mortgage tax. For example, mortgage tax, we looked at our 3-year actual collections, ran an average on that, and then reduced that amount by 15%. And you can see the net effect of that was reducing the projection by $110,000, which is almost a third of what we were budgeting in the first place. So these are some of the examples of the revenue categories that are most critical to our budget. And as you can see, most directly impacted by the COVID pandemic. Sales tax certainly is a big one. Parking meter fees, anyone who commutes into the city is not commuting into the city. We see that revenue impact directly from that reduction of the $7 per day per car that we would normally see going into that. The Village Justice Court has been ordered closed by the New York State Office of the Court Administration. So there are no fine collections. There's no revenue going into the justice accounts. Therefore, there's no revenue coming back into the village's general fund. There were significant reductions made there based on the time we knew that the courts have been closed and the expected time looking onto the onset of the New York pause of where we think things may open back up. The reduction on the fines, I believe, was 25% of the 3-year average or 2-year average. Kimberly, you want to jump in on that one?
The fines. Yes, we looked at a 2-year average because the 3-year was not feasible. So,
Okay.
And we took 25%.
And the other major category that I'd like to reference would be the property tax levy. The village is subject to a state law rather that requires the village not increase its tax levy by 2% or CPI, whichever is lesser. And in this year, our tax cap was going to be 1.78%. So in the context of putting this budget together, we made an attempt to live within that tax cap, as well as maintain programs, services, et cetera, and improve upon a very aggressive capital plan to start to reinvest into our infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, curbs, sewers, stormwater drainage, and some other items that we'll discuss later. The village board made it clear that we could not shoulder the entire burden of this financial disaster, basically, onto the taxpayers. There may be some communities that at this point in the game would have sought to break the tax cap and raise taxes by 2%, 3%, 4%. The village board was very clear that that was not an option here, that we had to find a way to be as close to no increase as possible. In this case, we were able to come up with a budget that, again, is responsible and realistic with a 1% tax levy increase. The difference between the tentative budget we had 4 weeks ago, and a 1% increase, as you'll see on the screen, is $111,000. So again, that's a further layer of cuts that we had to try and find within the budget and make reductions for, which I'm going to explain on the next slide. So there was $759,000 of revenues we lost. We had to
Excuse me, can I be heard at this time?
Yes, sir.
I see that for the slide, the prior slide, that it's the prior slide, that there was it says unaudited for 2018.
I think he's talking about fund balance slide.
I'm having electronic glitches here, so it's not easy for me to be more specific.
I brought back the slide. It should refresh, Paul.
But in any case, it's in parentheses and it says unaudited 2018, and it also says unaudited 2019.
Kimberly?
No,
Uh,
Paul, the 18-19 audit has not been certified at this point.
yes, that is
But it-
correct. It's, I suppose it's unaudited. I do have the work paper, but it's not finalized. So
But it's for 18, so,
it's 18-19, yes.
well, 2018 is a separate calendar year from 2019.
no.
I'm only focusing on 2018 for the
It's the,
moment.
it's
Fiscal year.
the,
But we're not on a calendar year, we're on a fiscal year.
it's the
So-
18.
Yes. I see. And when do you expect it to be presented, the audited?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that would be up to the board when to schedule the presentation. I have a unofficial work paper with the unofficial numbers, but as far as I know, they're not going to change. But until I have a final bound copy, I list it as unaudited.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly.
Mhm.
So again, in order to take the impact of $759,000 of revenue reductions, we had to make expenditure reductions because raising taxes by that amount to fill that gap was not going to work. So we looked at some of the larger numbers in the budget and we worked from there. Capital projects, this was probably going to be one of the largest endeavors for capital projects in the village certainly in the 5 years that I've been here, but maybe even longer. We had a lot of great projects, both first-year projects and multi-year projects, as well as ramping up projects such as roads, curbs, and sidewalks, which I have to say, of any complaint I get from the residents and property owners in Larchmont, it's generally the condition of roads and sidewalks. Unfortunately, we had to scale that back significantly in light of the revenue losses. So total capital reductions are in the order of $367,000 from where we were in March to where we are now. Workers' compensation was another area to the finance committee and others that were looking at that number. We went back, we looked at that workers' comp number. We looked at where we stood with New York State Insurance Fund. We looked at where we stood with PERMA, our new carrier for the next year. And we were able to make some sizable reductions on the order of $132,000. So that was great, but that didn't get us there. So we had to look at other areas. So we looked at staffing. In this particular juncture, the village was fortunate to have some funded vacancies. We've had people either separate from service and move on to other endeavors, or we'd had people that retired that we have not filled those positions. And we now, as part of a budget process leading into the next fiscal year, will not fill immediately. We're going to budget a staggered replacement of certain positions with a large asterisk that should things not pan out, they will be deferred even further or not filled at all. These are essential positions, as we've already cut back some of our departments as much as we've could over the years. But in any event, if the money's not there, the money's not there. So with the board's help, we'll watch the coming fiscal year. We'll review the numbers weekly, monthly, and quarterly, obviously, as we have to. And if things turn around, then we'll be able to fill some of these positions. But if not, we'll have to take that at that time. Those savings offered us approximately $167,000 of savings. And again, that there may be more there because this is purely a salary impact. This doesn't take into account some fringe benefits and other employment costs. And then we went through our other general fund operating lines with a fine-tooth comb, and we were able to identify another $91,464 of savings, and that got us to a comfortable place, and comfortable in the sense of that we were able to put a reasonable budget together with all of these unknowns, and not reduce or cut services in any dramatic manner. But this is a tough budget to put together, and it's going to stall a lot of important projects. And unfortunately, it may have an added cost impact. You know, there's a cost to waiting, and I expect there to be some cost to waiting. But obviously, we had to make difficult budget decisions, which we've done here.
Justin, on the other expenses, there are two categories that I had looked at. And I wish if you could comment on. There was a significant reduction in disposal operations. Could you comment on that? What that entails?
Well, I can comment quickly, or the mayor may want to chime in, but at a high level, the village has been discussing the operation and funding of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Joint Garbage Disposal Commission. And there had been discussions on the apportionment of costs. And at this point, we needed to budget reflectively of where we thought that apportionment was going to land. So for right now, we're expecting a change in that apportionment, and that change is reflected in the budget amount that we would normally expense the cost of the commission.
Yeah, and the second one was saw a reduction in the library fund.
Yes, the library was held to a 1% increase. So that's that. And we were able to determine there was some savings or some money owed to the library through a prior retirement payment. So we're going to handle it that way. The library's retirement GL line will be reduced in their fund, and the transfer from the general to the library reduced by the same amount. And that'll achieve the goal of a 1% increase on the village's side. It'll achieve the goal of not disrupting the flow of expenses between the town and the village as it pertains to the functioning of the library. And it really has no net impact on the library's proposed operating budget because it was money that they had already counted on anyway. So it was a creative way, and I thank the library director and the library board president for bringing that to our attention.
Then I saw a significant increase in the contingency account.
Yeah, exactly. And then some of that is the sanitation unknown. We have to keep all our options open as we're going to embark on the reapportionment of costs in good faith, obviously. And we've already had a number of the conversations. There's an unknown there. So we were building in for whatever unknown lies ahead.
And going forward, starting in June, what's your mode of operation going to be in terms of managing expenses in line with any changes in revenues that may come in?
Well, this was step one, Paul. Excuse me, John. This was step one, is realizing that we're going to see a significant drop in revenues. It's already happened in this fiscal year. All non-essential purchasing was basically put on hold, or it has to go through me to go ahead. The treasurer and the finance department, the treasury department, will monitor the receipts as they come in. We're going to rely on information from the county. We're going to rely on information from the New York State Government Finance Officials Association. We're going to rely on these channels to kind of pan out the pulse of the economy as the fiscal year embarks. And again, these savings are concrete. These are not maybe savings. These are real savings. And the opportunity to defer further hiring and staffing offers more savings if need be. And the opportunity to not move ahead with certain capital cash projects moving into the fiscal year is additional savings. And as we indicated, we have a rainy day fund for a reason. And if there's any day it's raining, it's today. So if there's a need be where we need to hit the fund balance for a certain amount of money, a reasonable amount of money, then we have the ability to do so because we did not budget for that on the onset of the budget.
Well, isn't it better to manage the expenses going forward, because the fund balance is one of the reasons that we get the favorable bond ratings that we get.
Of course, John, it's always best to keep our fund balance at the level that we need for our AAA rating, but we are in a really comfortable position as far as that's concerned. I think maybe Justin wasn't quite focusing in on the point of your question, which is that we would plan, and we do plan to have meetings quite often and review where the revenues are coming in at, so that we can make on the spot or at the moment changes to some of the expenses as we move through. So I think it's going to be a week by week, month by month balancing act of looking at where revenues are in terms of, are they beyond or below our projections, and then making any changes that we might need to the expense categories as we go. You know, some of the capital projects that we are keeping in the budget, we may defer them and wait if we see that things are coming in worse than we expected. We may also hold off on certain just regular purchases and do without. We'll have to play, you know, see how things move as information starts to come
Cash
in.
management is going to be the key to this coming year. Thank you for clarification.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. So
And
what's
in
the
order for
capital?
you to do that, Mayor, have you, is Justin implementing a rolling forward weekly actuals of income against expenses?
Who wants to answer that question?
No, no, we have a cash flow template that we will have in place that will monitor all of the revenue coming in. And I will be looking at the line items in the GL, each expenditure line item. We have a new workflow system in place where we can see the invoices in real time, and I'll be able to pull in those invoices up and look at them and look at the individual expenditure lines.
And just to make the point, most of our expenses, I would say 80% of them are personnel costs and the associated costs with them, insurance and debt service. So again, to the extent possible, we don't have part-timers that we don't use on a permanent basis. Overtime is only as essential for storms, emergencies, or covering crews that need to go out with a minimum, or minimum's a bad word, but a number of people that makes it safe to operate. But in terms of buying things for the sake of buying them, that's not happening. And any purchases that are made will be reviewed for their need. Just to speak on the cash, the capital projects that we pay through the cash transfer, this is what's in so far. We have an allocated amount right now in this current year for LED streetlights, which we're finalizing with the New York Power Authority. Phase 2 of that is 75,000. That'll get us through the finish line. So that'll enable all of the streetlights in the village to be changed out. And we'll start to see a savings of $60,000 a year, plus or minus, once 100% of those streetlights have been phased out. There is some curb, sidewalk, and road money in there. And again, this is just a cash amount. This includes things like the 60/40 program, curbing work and road work. This does not include money that we may receive from Con Edison, which is part of our joint payment restoration agreement. This does not include an assumption on what, if any, we'll get from New York State. New York State offers what's called CHIPS money, and that's money directly from New York State DOT. It's a reimbursement for a certain amount of road work that they allow us to do, on the understanding that more than just village residents use our roadways. Stormwater and drainage improvement projects is in still. Again, we've heard on the same context of road quality, drainage issues plague certain problem areas in the village, and we'd like to start addressing that by either changing the grades of roads, installing stormwater systems, and helping folks that have connection issues with sump pumps to alleviate their problem but not cause a public problem. So we have money in there for that, and the work of the consulting engineer has helped us put together a roadmap for a multi-year capital improvement project that will start to address these issues that have been around for, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years or more. Some ongoing capital projects. Again, the board has taken an approach to take big projects and break them up over multiple years if we can. It helps get a few things off the ground, and it helps to start the process of replacing equipment and materials and small projects that can be phased in. And it's been a great program. Some projects have already been started and completed. These are kind of in queue and the second or final year of them. So the board will continue these projects. And again, we have one marked police cruiser that is in queue for replacement. And again, that's something that by halfway through the year or three quarters of the way through the year, if we're seeing a further decline on what we projected in terms of budgeted revenues, then we don't buy the police car and we spend a little more to fix the old one and keep it going until next year. And that's kind of the beauty of this way of funding capital projects, that if we do have a really bad year, which we're having, we can pause them and we don't have to obligate to pay that debt service that some other strategies employ. What did we defer? We deferred almost $200,000 of roads, curbs, and sidewalks. It's a shame. We had a great price with a great contractor. We're going to get some work done. We're going to have to defer that. We were going to replace 2 additional police cruisers. And you're going to say, gee, why were you planning on replacing 3 police cars? Well, we didn't replace any last year. And they still go out 24/7 and they still get used. And there's a sweet spot in terms of how long you keep them for their useful life versus selling them and getting your money out of them. So we waited last year, and now we're going to have to wait again this year. So we're going to be in trouble if we have to wait another year. DPW vehicles and equipment, we had some money allocated there to replace some older vehicles and equipment. And we've started that program with the DPW fleet, and we've seen some amazing sales on some of our surplus pickup trucks. If we get them out, less than 10 years old, we're getting almost a third of the value back on them, and we get rid of them before they really become a headache for us. And then again, in terms of our capital projects and plan, we have a 5-year plan for a reason. So we start to phase in projects at a certain point that, in this stage of the game, we're out 5 years. So now we were starting some first-year projects, but we're going to defer those first-year projects. They're needed, but because we've been planning for them, they're not surprises. So we were able to budget for them this year. We're going to hold them, and we'll try and get them into the budget next year. What does this all mean? There's 3 columns of numbers. In 1920, our adopted budget was 19.6 million, and it was a balanced budget as we're required to adopt by law. What we had proposed back in March 18th was a $19.8 million budget with a $260,000 gap, and that gap would have required a 1.75% increase to the property tax levy. And where we're at now is a $19 million budget, a net decrease of almost 800,000 from just a few weeks ago. And what we're saying that we'll need a 1% increase in the tax levy to balance this budget. And what does that mean for the average assessed home in Larchmont? The village is asking you to contribute $63 more per year to maintain status quo in Larchmont. And so again, for the average taxpayer that has a market value of 1.6 million, with the increase in the tax rate, the net effect on the tax bill is $63.80. And with that, I believe, yes, that's all I have on the budget presentation.
I'm going to ask Rob to please unmute all participants in this Zoom. And then I'm going to ask the board, I seek a motion to open the public hearing on the tentative 2020-2021 village budget.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, is there anyone who is participating right now
Yes, Mayor.
who would like to ask a question? Okay, Michael Gottfried.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, members, trustees. At the outset, I want to thank you very, very much for the opportunity to appear before you in this manner. It would be preferable to be in front of you, but we do what we got to do. I just want to say the nicest thing I heard in a while was when Mr. Duttino said that the board instructed him to go to close to no increase as possible. That really is heartwarming as a resident. It was something that I asked the board to consider last January 22nd in 2019, and again a year ago when I was heckled. And someone suggested I should move to a retirement community, which fortunately I didn't have to do. But the good news is that, I should say that I didn't have to move, but more importantly, we're not laughing anymore this year. And you all have taken seriously the request that we plan for a zero budget. I can't thank you enough. I can't commend you enough. That demonstrates a commitment to efficiency, and it's particularly heartwarming. I would like to ask Mr. Duttino to go back to his slide about the fund balance. The fund balance slides, if you could put that up. It says on there that the reserve is there's two different reserves. There's two fund balance levels.
Wait,
Um,
Michael, wait, oh, there we go. Wait till it's up for everybody who's watching
So
on
the
TV.
first one is 3,114,000, et cetera. And the second one is 2,578,134. It's my understanding that the general fund expenses for 18-19 were 19,440,655 as budgeted. And also as actual, it was very close to that. So we can use either number. $19,466,018 is what's listed on page 26 of the tentative budget number 2. And so I'm trying to understand how you get to 18.1% with either of those numbers.
That would be against the proposed numbers as we have them now, Michael.
No, how do you, well, I'm sorry?
The 19,027,000, that's where we are right now. That's what's proposed for 2021.
Okay, well, so then how do you get to the number? 1 second. How do you get the 18.1%?
Kimberly?
Oh, towards operating expenditures. So you back out the capital and the debt service. But you do include sanitation.
So you back out, okay. You don't just take the total expenses, the general
No.
fund. So it's not,
No,
and which number do you use? Do you use the total fund balance, or do you use the unreserved fund balance?
I believe I use the total fund balance.
Are there restrictions on any of the funds that are in that fund balance?
So there are, but I'm thinking of the way we would view it in an official statement if we were going to market. So I believe they take the total fund balance. I mean, you could do it either way, but for our purposes, that's how I chose to do it.
And so what would be the, so if I just multiplied 18.1% or divided 3 million by 18.1%, I would get to what the general fund number is.
Well, I don't have access right now to my desktop, but I can get you the calculation if you'd like it.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the difference, if you're using the total, the 19 million, you're at a 13% rate. And so I don't understand how you get to 18.1, and I'd like to understand that. Similarly,
Okay,
if you use
if
the
you
full
give me a
balance.
minute and I'll.
No, I don't. I would just. It's not important for tonight. One other thing I saw, if you go to the last page, Justin, where you were talking about the tax rate increase. When you look at that, yes, that one. When you divide 5.22 by 5.18, you get a 0.77% increase as opposed to the 1% that you're talking about. So it's my understanding that the difference would be the change in the tax rolls. Am I correct? Or is there something else that I'm missing?
This would be based on the 2020 final assessment roll.
Okay, because there's no numbers provided in terms of the assessment rolls from last year or this year. And so how would we know how, because I mean, 0.77% is a better number than 1%. I'm just curious as to if those numbers can be provided.
Sure.
Okay. There were a couple other, I don't really want to take a lot of people's time on this, but there were a couple line items that I think I don't know if the board is planning on passing this tonight or if it's going to be considered this week, because I have some suggestions as to particular line items that need to be reviewed that just don't look right.
It's not our plan to pass the budget this evening.
Okay, in that case, Mayor, may I give you a few lists of accounts that I might ask you to look at.
Yes, certainly.
A 40-2010. A 40-2860. A 1900-1910. A 9000-9040. F 9000-9040. And L 9000-9040. And let me, on the last one, that's the workers' comp one.
Mhm.
First of all, thank you again for going through that. I think that's a tremendous benefit that the residents have gotten in the work that this administration has done over the past year on that front, as well as the sanitation. But I do believe that the number of 400,000 may be too high. I don't understand how a bill of $336,000 for the current fiscal year goes up to $400,000. And I think that the savings might be shared with the water fund and the library. So I would ask anybody who is a businessman whether or not they check their insurances since the coronavirus is it. And I know that some of the clients that I've been advising lately, what they've been going to their insurance carriers and getting reimbursements. And so I think on the liability and on the workers' comp, one would expect that the cost for the next fiscal year is going to be, maybe 5 or 10%, maybe a little bit more lower than it was this year. So I would ask that you just take a look at it and look at it through each of the funds, because I think that there should be a few pennies to be saved under the carpet or found under the carpet on that last one.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, I'll interject here. Yes, I did go back and we negotiate with our insurance companies, and they did find some reductions for us. Now, with the changing in labor,
Uh-oh.
and everything's negotiable now when it comes to insurance. Yes. Did you guys hear that at all or no?
We got the gist.
But
Your
yeah, I mean, everything's
connections.
negotiable is the bottom line.
Well, okay, well, those are the line items that I think it would be great to just take another peek at before you close this thing down.
Okay.
And again, I just want to thank you. It's for your attentiveness on this stuff. It's it's hard to keep advocating, but I want to say you guys did a tremendous job in addressing a lot of the cost structures, and I, as a resident, feel very pleased. Even though I would love to have seen it at 1, it was the most important 0. Excuse me. The most important thing I heard this evening was that there was unanimity in the instructions that were given to the administrator to go find it, and I think he did, and I commend him also for a lot of the savings that we're seeing this year in the water fund, which is not up for discussion here. The concerted effort has saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it will continue into the future. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Michael.
I'd like to just
This
go
is-
back for a moment to
this-
know.
Is
As
that
the-
is that Paul Silverman speaking, or is that Ian?
It is Paul Silverman.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
There's a problem on electronics, so I'm talking to you through the telephone.
I see. Old fashioned.
The masked man, yes. So the question is back to sanitation and the recognition that people would be required to bring their garbage down to the street, down to the curb, because of the exigencies of the circumstances. And also for the same reasons that the pickup was reduced. Do we see savings in personnel reductions or slowdown?
Pickup was not reduced. There was a discussion that we might possibly want to move to once a week pickup. But it became very difficult to readjust the routes and the staffing. And then after the first week or two, we realized that actually people were home and home more, and we're producing more, even more trash than usual. So we stayed with the regular schedule. So the only change has been moving to curbside pickup. What that allowed us to do was to reduce the staffing of the trucks. And we primarily did that in order to protect the employees. If two employees per truck, one could be in the cab, one could ride on the back, and they could keep the proper distance from each other. That would mean that they wouldn't get sick, which is a great thing for them, but also it meant that if they didn't get sick, the commission would be able to continue to operate at its regular level. And so that's where that came from. We're watching to see if we're watching several things. We're watching tonnages to see how they change. But there was no changing in staffing levels unless possibly there would be a change in some temporary workers who might be called in. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. For overtime, et cetera. That would be a change.
That's what I thought.
But yeah, since we're not furloughing employees in the middle of our crisis, we're just rearranging the chairs on the. I don't want to say it. No, forget it. We're rearranging how the work. We're not that bad off yet. Rearranging how the workers are deployed for safety reasons.
I'm benefiting being on telephone, so you can't see me smile.
Right.
We can
That's
imagine.
open mouth, insert foot.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the question, though. Is there any other question or comment?
Yeah, I just had a quick, this is Ian Post. Thanks everyone for holding the meeting. I was just curious about the projections on sales tax revenue. The 15% down from the original projection seems a little optimistic. And I was just wondering how much modeling's been done in terms of the granular components of that.
I think can you put the slide back up, Justin, for revenue? Because I thought sales tax we had 25%. I think we had basically, I think Kimberly, maybe Kimberly can speak to that. For sales tax, we
originally had 25, and Justin and I had a conversation, and we decided to reduce it by 15%.
Oh, you did?
Based on from what input?
That had the county budget director.
Thank you.
Provided the villages that are going through the budget process right now with some insight. And they basically recommended that we go back to our pre 1% increase levels. So if we went back to that, we were historically, well, not historically, but at least the prior few fiscal years, we were budgeting $900,000 for the receipt of sales tax. With the 1%, we were going to move it up to $1 million, which was still low based on where we thought sales tax may go. So county recommends we go back to 900,000. We say, well, we're going to play it a little safer. We're going to roll this back even further and go to 850. This is because we do have the internet sales tax collection. So although retail sales have dropped off dramatically, people are still buying stuff. People are still shopping. They're just not shopping in public. So we went above and beyond what the county even recommended. And again, it's a projection based on information we have at the time, and we'll continue to monitor it.
And I think
you should be aware that Governor Cuomo, in his daily fireside chat indicated the state reductions down would be 20% at this moment, and he'd have to review it going forward with regard to sales tax.
Right, but I think the point, and we can look at this again between now and adoption. And I wish we could get April's numbers from the county, but by the time they come, we'll have had to make an adoption. But we were very conservative with our sales tax projection. Anyway, we never fully encapsulated the 1% increase in the county sales tax. We really only considered a minimal increase based on the projections from the comptroller last year. And I don't remember what month the internet sales tax started to come through, but I know that was not captured either to a full extent in the previous year's revenue adoption. So if we figured all that in, our 15 might very well be Governor Cuomo's 20, because I'm sure he's 20% off of the full Monty, and we're not.
The county's using 20%, but that's why it's so important going forward that you really monitor the revenue and the sales tax as it comes in and respond to what you're finding as you go through.
Right. Again, the county's 20% off of, the full pie, right? Which we weren't starting with the full pie. But I know we spoke with Larry Sewell, I guess he's the financial director for the county.
He's the budget director.
Budget director. By the third quarter, I think they were projecting, at least at the date we spoke with him, that sales tax revenue would be just about back up to expected levels.
That seems unlikely.
I agree, Ian.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're taking some initial piece, and then it's going to be following along and what happens. And
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
that's how you
Absolutely.
manage.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the approach we have to take.
Right.
Take a reasonable cut now and then just continue to follow.
Right, and react.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the fund balance slide, please? So I can answer Michael's question.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do, Michael, is take the total expenditures and back out the debt service, and then back out all the transfers, including the capital. And then you're going to take the percentage of total fund balance against the operating expenditures of 17,185,524. And that gives you the 18.1.
I was writing. I'm sorry, am I on mute, or I guess?
No, you're not on mute.
Okay, good. I was trying to write that down as quickly as I could. So I have the $19 million.
Yep. So you're going to take the total expenditures. You want to back out any debt service and any transfers. And then you're going to take the percentage based on total fund balance.
So that's the 3 million.
Yes, correct.
The full, including fund balance.
Including restricted, right? So unreserved, available fund balance, and restricted.
Okay. And this is the number that we find going back in time.
Yes.
Because my analysis of the fund balance wasn't as intricate as this is. I just took the unreserved fund balance and divided it into the operating general fund expenses, the top line number.
Mhm.
And I see that it was at 13.3%, down from 20.8% 4 years ago. And by the way, you know, we had a downturn like this, and we had back in 2002 through 2006. We had a decline by my metric of similar decline from the 21% level down to the 13.3% level, and it grew. It grew over the next 10 years, and so hopefully, with the fiscal prudence that is that is gripping, I think every municipality, it will return to the levels again, because you're right, this is a rainy day, and this number, we are, although we're, I don't know whether that's 13.3% or 18.1%. I have to go back and do the numbers, but it's nice to have that cushion.
Michael Godfrey.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Is that a no?
I take that as a no.
None
I
here.
take that as a no. All right, so then I'll seek a motion to close the adjourn the public hearing, close it.
I think you can close
Here's
it
where I
at this
need,
point. Oh,
Mr. Stout, this is where I need you.
I'm here.
Yes, so we'll close it. There'll be another point at which we'll adopt at a public meeting, but it won't be a public hearing, correct?
Correct. Justin, you agree with closing it, do you?
I do.
Yeah. I don't know now. Have you taken all comments from the public as well now?
We have asked for all comment and there is no one left who wishes to make a comment.
Okay, so not
But
just,
there might be other adjustments that may come up before the final.
yes, that can happen.
Yes.
You still would close the hearing.
Okay.
All right, so I seek a motion to close the hearing on
So
the,
moved.
thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll look into anything that was brought up this evening. And we have 10 days, right? 10 days
Yep.
to, sharpen the pencil
Lot of
and
time.
see if any of the numbers change. If we can get any more information in before we adopt the final budget. Next up on the agenda, we have the public hearing, which was adjourned from March 18th on the proposed local law authorizing a property tax levy in excess of the limit established in general municipal law. It is clear that we will not be seeking to exceed the tax cap, far from it. So, Mr. Stout, I can seek a motion to close this public hearing because the law is not needed. It's true.
Yes,
Thank you.
So
I seek
moved.
a motion to close the public hearing on the local law authorizing a property tax cap override.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
and I think if you want now, Mayor, you can seek a motion to withdraw the law from
Okay,
consideration.
and I will. I seek a motion to withdraw the law.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the public hearing for a proposed local law to amend the planning board membership law code of the Village of Larchmont. And this law basically will allow the Board of Trustees to appoint, for myself to appoint with the approval of the Board of Trustees, alternate members to the planning board. Some of our other boards also have alternate members. It comes in very handy when, for one reason or another, the board or commission cannot get enough members to a meeting for a quorum. So instead of putting off all the applicants and the agenda for yet another month, we can pull in an alternate member. The alternate members are kept up to speed. They receive all of the documents that the regular members receive. So they're ready to step in whenever needed. And for some quirk, we have to actually write this into our law in order to allow us to appoint alternate members. So I seek a motion to open the public hearing on this proposed local law.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment or ask a question on this proposed local law? Paul? No. Then
Clearing his throat.
I guess he was. Since there's no one who has chosen to speak, I will seek a motion to close the public hearing on this proposed local law.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now I seek a motion to adopt the local law amending the planning board membership law code of the village of Larchmont to add alternate members to the planning board.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Very
We're
good.
not as well choreographed as we.
No, we're like
heard.
the
I know, it's
rhythm's
a little
off.
hard. It's a little hard
One,
on here, right? And then next up, we had set a public hearing for tonight for a proposed local law to amend the code of the village of Larchmont regarding chapter 215. This was a property maintenance code which dealt with the registration and fees for vacant commercial properties. Given the present circumstances in our business community downtown due to the shutdown of all business, I am going to seek a motion to withdraw this law from consideration.
Is that a temporary withdrawal, Mayor?
It is a withdrawal, and if we wish to place it back, we will set another public hearing.
Thank you. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the electric vehicle charging stations. Paul? Rob, can you mute Paul Silverman, please? Thank you.
A nice touch.
I know, it is a nice touch. Don't you wish you had that in all your experiences?
Every day.
Now, this is being recorded.
So,
No, not for Paul, just in life.
no, nothing for Paul. It's just the idea of like being able to mute somebody just by request. So next up, electric vehicle charging stations. This board is very interested in exploring and promoting a move towards a more green application of the functions of government. You saw earlier, we have a robust Larchmont Environmental Committee who works on issues for us. We appointed a new member this evening. And we also have included and kept in our capital project plan the final phase of the LED streetlight transformation, which will save the village a lot of money in electric costs and save electricity in the as a side benefit, money and saving electricity, which is great because the more electricity you save, the less fuel source you have to use in order to create that electricity. So we also are looking at moving towards a green fleet policy. And part of that, we're also looking at purchasing hybrid and electric vehicles when the opportunity for us to purchase vehicles comes around again. And a lot of residents are starting to use electric vehicles. So we've been looking into the concept of putting in charging stations in the village. We have a wonderful intern who has worked on this project. She has worked with resident Michael Gottfried. Her name is Caitlin Carpenter. She's a student in Joe Liberty's Okra class at Mamaroneck High School, which is Original Civics Research and Action. And she has a presentation to show to us, and then we're going to move on to some resolutions that will follow there. Caitlin, are you here? Now we have to get Caitlin turned on. Rob, can you put Caitlin on, please?
Just unmute her.
Hello, can you hear me?
Is that you, Caitlin?
Yes, this is.
Yep,
Yes.
we gotcha.
Got me?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so there's a slide presentation, so if you could just put that up, that would be great.
Okay, Justin, you're gonna put up her slide presentation?
Sure.
Okay. Give us just a moment. Yes. Rob, can you also please unmute Michael Gottfried? He worked on this project with Caitlin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. So Caitlin, just let Justin know when he should click to the next slide.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So first, before I begin, I just would like to thank all of you for the opportunity to participate in this virtual board meeting. It's really hard to think past the pandemic, and so we really appreciate that you're taking the time to focus on this important environmental issue, rather exciting environmental issue as well. So we're here tonight to advocate for you to authorize the Village of Larchmont to submit a grant application that, if it is received, would provide the funding to install 3 electric vehicle chargers throughout the village. This grant, which is offered by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation under their Zero Emissions Vehicle Infrastructure Grant Program, provides a reimbursement of 80% of eligible costs of installation. And so before I turn to specifics around the grant and the chargers, I just would like to acknowledge the incredibly talented and dedicated individuals that have helped us to move this project forward at the speed that it has. Could you turn the slide, please? Great, thank you so much. So we couldn't have done this without the support of you, Mayor Walsh, the Environmental Committee in Larchmont, including the co-chairs and the liaison, Trustee Bauer, the head of the DPW, Rick Vettery, Ron Kamen, and multiple contractors who have quickly put together a plan for the village to install these chargers. Town Supervisor Nancy Seligson was also the first person we spoke to in relation to this project, and she was generous with her time and provided us with access to not only the town administrator and his staff, but also the town of Mamaroneck resident, Denise Dunn, who did the job that I'm doing right now 2 years ago. We also spoke with State Assemblyman Steve Otis, who is supporting this project all the way from Albany, and he will be submitting a letter in support of our application. So, like all of the individuals that we had the opportunity to work with, and like everybody here, the Assemblyman is always looking for ways to promote the expansion of electric vehicle infrastructure in New York because he realizes the importance of this development. And so finally, I would like to say that it means so much to me and everyone in my generation that you are taking the time and putting in the effort to reduce our emissions, particularly in the transportation sector. The time to act on this environmental issue is now, and we really believe that one of the best ways that we can act here in Larchmont is to support the growth of electric vehicles by installing infrastructure that supports it. And so, having said all of that, let's get into some specifics. So, could we turn the slide, please? So, what I'll be going over this evening is the chargers themselves. So these are the CT4021 chargers offered by ChargePoint, as well as the locations for these chargers, and then also the budget for these chargers and the grant. And so let's, next slide, please. So we're going to start with the chargers. The proposal is to install 3 of these ChargePoint CT4021 Level 2 dual port chargers in the village within the upcoming fiscal year. So to break this down, because that may seem like a lot, the level 2 portion of this refers to the fact that per hour charging, this charger can add about 12 to 25 miles of range to a vehicle, depending on the vehicle type, as well as its onboard charger. Just by comparison, a level 3 charger, which we are not advocating for here is mostly found in parking lot malls and other high traffic places because the cost is prohibitive. It's about $100,000 per charger, and then the dual port portion of the CT4021 means that it can simply support charging capabilities in 2 parking spaces. So the charger also has a 5-year warranty, which you will see here, which is offered by ChargePoint. So that's the company that makes it. This covers repairs, replacement on any of the parts should they fault within the first 5 years after installation, as well as reports on usage of the stations so that the village can be aware of how residents are responding to the chargers. Moving into some of the features, which you have been looking at on this slide, there are many features which make this charger appealing for the village and make it a suitable charger for the village to install. But I would like to highlight one feature, which is just that this is a charger that has been used in the town of Mamaroneck that they installed last year. And so this is important because it means that when we install these, or if we install these, then we will be creating a sense of coherency throughout our community, and residents will not have to learn how to charge their vehicles in different systems depending on where they are in the community. So that makes it as easy as possible for residents to own and use their electric vehicles in our community. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So ease is important to us, and so that people are more inclined to purchase and use their electric vehicles. So that is why we've also selected 3 centralized and popular locations in the heart of Larchmont's business districts to place these chargers. So as you can see here, this is the parking spaces across from Village Hall next to the library, the Addison Street parking lot, and the Went Avenue West parking lot. In the Addison lot, so each charger is going to have a power source, obviously, needs a power source to run. They are electric. And so in the Addison lot, this power source will be located on the side of the building across from the charger's planned location. And then in the other 2 lots, the power source will be located from a nearby light pole. And so can we move to the next slide, please? This is just an example of what it'll look like at the Village Hall. The little electricity bolt is the power source, and then the blue symbol is for the charger. So for these locations, we have spoken with Rick Vettery, the head of the DPW, who's helped us to determine where the optimal locations for the chargers will be based on where the power source is. There still needs to be discussion here with Con Ed if the grant is received, just about any possible electrical upgrades that need to happen, but we have reserved additional funds in the budget to cover any unknown costs that happen as a result of these conversations. Additionally, by placing these chargers in these locations, we'll not only be serving residents by putting them in central locations, but they'll also help to attract shoppers and diners from nearby municipalities that may come to Larchmont to charge their vehicles as they shop and dine within the business districts. And so just so you also are aware, any chargers that are installed through the ChargePoint networks are put on the ChargePoint app, as well as some other electric vehicle apps, so that electric vehicle owners can know as they're traveling where they can stop to charge their vehicles. So this could help people to discover Larchmont and again feed into our local businesses. And lastly, we are also hopeful that someday these chargers may be used by teachers at Chatsworth, who might be inclined to drive an electric vehicle to work and then charge during the school day as they're teaching. Could you move to the next slide, please? So moving into the budget for each of these stations, this is budget per charging station, so this is just for one of them. We estimate that the total project costs will cost anywhere between $24,000 to $31,000, and so that's, again, the total project cost. This is dependent upon those conversations with Con Ed that I had mentioned earlier. If I could direct your attention to the match funds by village column, this is where the village will be directly paying. So the personnel services are payment in kind. So that's the $2,267 are payment in kind. Then the project management is $825 that we have received an anonymous donation for, and so the village will not have to pay that $825. The only out-of-payment costs that the village has to pay will be the contractual services. So that means, again, the village will be paying the only out-of-payment cost per each charger will be $3,379 for the chargers. Okay, moving to next slide, please. Great, thank you so much. So the grant application itself is done through an online portal, and so on this online portal, you have to answer some questions and upload supporting attachments and documents to those questions. We are thankful for the grant application model the town of Mamaroneck shared with us, because they were reimbursed for the installation of their chargers through this same grant. We are especially thankful for Ms. Dunn, who I had mentioned earlier at the beginning of this presentation. She had sat with us at the Nautilus Diner and over the following weeks helped us to understand all of the grant documents that she had helped the town of Mamaroneck also with. We are cautiously optimistic that, like the town, we are able to receive this grant, and again, it reimburses 80% of eligible costs of installation, and so very important. So the installation of these chargers is really an incredible opportunity for Larchmont to continue its tradition of leading and encouraging sustainable practices and environmentally friendly practices. It's also an incredible opportunity for the village to reduce its carbon footprint by expanding its use of electric vehicles. This grant application that we're discussing also meshes neatly with the village's impending passage of a green fleet policy, which will help the village to transition into widespread electric vehicle use in its municipal fleets. So we are hopeful to look back soon and find that this grant application and our efforts open the doors for greater use of electric transportation by the residents and by the village of Larchmont. Next slide, please. So, in conclusion, we urge you to start moving towards a cleaner, more sustainable Larchmont through the installation of this electric vehicle infrastructure. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time this evening and open it up to any questions that you may have. Sorry, that was my radiator.
You're muted, Luann.
Thank you, Caitlin. Am I correct in my assumption that the applications, we actually submit one application for each charging station that we are looking to fund?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and so are the applications specific to the locations?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Although a lot of the material on each of the applications can be used and copied over from each of them. There's just a few portions that are specific to each location.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the potential, you know, should 2 out of the 3 be approved instead of all 3, you know, how does that play out? But we'll cross that bridge if we get to it.
Got it.
Mayor, may I answer that question?
Yes.
You know, first of all, I can't imagine that that's going to be the case. Ron Kamen probably could answer that better. But you would be able to provide 2 out of the 3. I think all of the costs that Caitlin outlined were specific to each location. She did mention that there's one little wrinkle in there in terms of Con Ed that needs to be ironed out with respect to 2 of the places. The electricians that we had we spoke with had indicated that the Addison Street is basically ready to go. So when she mentioned that there was $7,000 that we were reserving in there for you know, just in case there's an electrical upgrade that's needed. You know, we're hopeful based upon what we've seen that this is going to be a simple project, and if there is a electrical upgrade, it's going to be very minor. The town had installed these, and basically they in some instances, they required a bigger upgrade, but in the ones that we modeled, the ones that by Memorial Field, I believe they didn't require them, and so we're kind of we looked at the places that we thought would give the best shot to have it come in at 20, at 25 apiece.
But Michael, those additional costs that would be incurred would still be covered by the grant?
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah.
In fact, if Justin can go back to the slide, you'll see that almost everything is covered by the grant. The payment in kind piece, and there's actually a typo on that number. That's my mistake on the bottom. But don't look at the subtotal. Look at the three components. The payment in kind is a pretty big multiplier. So now the contractual services, you have a warranty that ChargePoint offers. It's a top line warranty for 5 years, and it's highly recommended by Ron, as well as someone's trying to call me. So apologize for that. I'll call John back afterwards, but the warranty for years 1 and 2 are covered, and they're fully in the contractual services. The contractual services piece.
Right.
And my friend John McGar, I love him, but now's not the time.
He doesn't understand how Zoom works, maybe.
He doesn't, does he? It's okay. So years 3 to 5 is what makes up the contractual services piece for the warranty, as well as for the reporting. Now, there is going to be an obligation to report to New York DEC on a regular basis the statistics. I think it's relatively straightforward. We included in the personnel services some training for it, but it's something also that I know that the environmental committee is very interested in receiving. So those are the two pieces that have to be paid for by the village. Years 3 to 5 of each of those. The first 2 are paid for by the grant.
Okay, thank you.
I
Are there
have
any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Caitlin.
Yeah.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Someone using the app or however they connect to one of the charging stations, how long is the car actually connected to be charged?
Well, I think that is dependent on whoever is the owner, however long they want to connect the car to charge. It doesn't disconnect at a certain point, I would assume. I would assume that owners could disconnect their car as soon as it is reached full charge. But that is up to their discretion.
Is it possible that someone will plug in their car and then go for a walk and be sort of tying up the charging station when someone else would like to use it?
I would assume that would be possible, but I think that they, again, would be paying for whatever, or at least at some point they will be paying for however long they are charging for. And so, it would be maybe in their best interest not to leave their car at the station for the entire day. But, I mean, Michael, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, yes. Trustee Froman, thank you very much for that question. That's a really important issue. It gets into the bigger issue of charging for the space versus pricing. And there's a lot of connective information that this machine can provide. But yes, the town right now is going through the whole question about how much should be charged and how long should be you should be allowed to stand there for. And I suspect that the village will make its own decision, but we'll get the benefit again of the learning curve that they're going through. That's an issue that those two issues will need to be discussed at a later point.
we also just got a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Ron Kamen, who's from Earthkind Energy. He's helped us through this in consulting. And he says that the village can set the amount of time anyone can charge. Usually that's 2 or 3 hours, and the car has to be charging as opposed to just sitting there.
Right. And so I think even if it's, if they've put it for 2 hours and wandered off and it reaches its max and it's no longer charging, they're still paying for that time.
So the incentive would be to get charged and get unplugged.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely want them to get a permit pass.
Well, it'd be probably a metered space, and there might be, you know, it might cost more to occupy a charging station that's not being used to charge than it would to park in another spot.
Right.
But we can learn a lot. I don't know that the town has finalized how they're going to handle the charging. I know Trustee Finelli and I had sat in on a town work session where they had just begun the conversation. That was probably, it was in a different era, pre-COVID. It was February, maybe?
It was February.
I think yeah. So we can look to them and see where they land, and then watch how it works for them and learn a lot from their experience.
Terrific. Thank you.
Any other questions for
I just want to say,
Caitlin?
Caitlin, you know, for a sophomore in high school, you are very well prepared. I'm a Tiger man from class of 77. You make me very proud. And I personally want to thank you for the presentation. You and your team did a great job. And I think the board's looking forward to making the final decisions.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. It was really
Well done.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've had our presentation, and next on our agenda is a resolution to develop Village of Larchmont Green Fleets policy. And now I get to try to share a screen. And here we are. Hey, it worked.
Wow.
Wow, look at that.
Right.
And so here we have a resolution, whereas the Village of Larchmont recognizes that petroleum-based energy use associated with the operation of motor vehicles exacerbates local air quality problems and results in greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global climate change. And whereas the Village of Larchmont, in demonstrating its concern, is a participant in the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, which encourages its members to further participate by adopting their Green Fleets initiative. And whereas the Village of Larchmont has a goal to purchase fuel-efficient and alternative fuel vehicles to improve local air quality, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and set an example for the private sector and the community at large. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the Village of Larchmont will develop a Green Fleets policy, which includes an inventory of fleet vehicles, establishment of clear goals for reducing energy use and emissions from fleet activities, and action steps to achieve the stated goals. I'm going to seek a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. That's the first step on our way towards having a green fleet, or a greener fleet, step by step. And we did receive from Mr. Kamen, who may still be on, but who answered a question via the chat for us. He worked with the town of Mamaroneck on their electric vehicle charging project. And I am going to ask the board to approve a resolution to authorize the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Earthkind Energy, which is Ron Kamen's company, for the preparation and submittal of applications for the New York State DEC Zero Emission ZEV grant for 3 level 2 EV charging stations which is not to exceed the sum of $2,500. Does anyone have any questions at this point before we move to a motion?
May I would just propose you add some language,
Mhm.
something along the lines of, and is authorized to take administrative tasks as may be required for the completion of the grant application.
I will add that.
Thank
So
you.
added.
Go ahead. Very good.
Okay, so I seek a motion to approve this resolution,
So moved.
authorizing the administrator. Thank you, Trustee Finelli. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Herman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Yay. So we're moving
Yay.
ever closer. I like that Paul Silverman is an empty leather chair right now.
Mayor, may I just say one word? on
Yes,
this?
Michael.
With Earth Day coming up this week,
Michael Godfrey.
this is just, it's really an amazing thing for this resolution to be passed on the Green Fleet policy. Can't thank you enough. I think you're doing a great thing for this generation and for the future.
Thank you. That's our intention, right?
Always, with everything.
Everything.
Always moving forward.
We are now at number 5 on our agenda, trustee reports. I'm going to start with Trustee Finelli because he's next to me on my view of the screen.
Well, I'm really quick this time, so no worries.
Likely story.
No one believes it, Papa.
Everything's been canceled. The Tour de
There you
Larchmont is done. Memorial Day Parade has been canceled, and the Sprint to Flint in June has been canceled.
Oh.
Hoping that the concerts in Constitution Park in July council will be taking place. We'll see if the park is ready and if we're clear to have a small gathering. And we're also, for those of you out there, we're still waiting to get a go, no go on Flint Park Day Camp, and that'll come down from Albany.
Right.
Additionally, we are always, and I preach this every meeting, we are always looking for volunteer firefighters. So if anybody out there has a little bit of free time on their hands, I know I do, come on down and we'd love to have you. I'm at 914-403-2387. Give me a call. I can talk you through it. We can't go into the firehouse, but maybe we can peek in through the window for now. That's it, Mayor. Thank you. And listen,
Great.
safe travels, everybody.
Thank you very much. Trustee Froman.
Yes, the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force, which for almost 28 years now has been running a food pantry in Mamaroneck to offer food assistance to struggling families, was facing a dilemma, how to provide food in a safe manner so that both the food recipients and the volunteers would be protected. So after suspending its regular food distributions, it has come up with a solution. Tomorrow, there will be an outdoor drive-through and walk-through food distribution for the community. Volunteers will be there packing over 600 bags of food to distribute to struggling families. And of course, the need has grown. Typically, the Hunger Task Force would distribute about 350 to 350 households, and now we're expecting close to double that. As luck would have it, the weather forecast for tomorrow is pretty bad. There's going to be rain and wind, but coming to the rescue is Rick Viteri, our general foreman of the DPW. And tomorrow morning at 7:30, Rick will be sending his team of DPW fellows to install 12 canopies that will protect both the food and the volunteers so that the distribution can go on. So I want to thank Rick and the DPW team for coming to our rescue. And I would also like to say that since we depend so much on the support of the community, it's been really gratifying how residents, not only of the village of Larchmont, but from the entire town of Mamaroneck, have been sending in very, very generous donations to help our efforts. So I want to thank the community for that. It's very gratifying to be living in such a generous village. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you for all the work you do with the Hunger Task Force. Never more important than now, right?
Alas, yes.
Malcolm, where is that drive-through?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mention this. It's at the Mamaroneck Avenue School parking lot. The reason we chose that site, aside from it being a very large parking lot, which will facilitate the walk through, the food packing and the walk-through and the drive-through, the location of the Mamaroneck Avenue School is very convenient to the majority of the clients that typically rely on the food pantry.
Thank you. Trustee Bauer.
I don't have much to report, but if you are looking for something to do, please check out the library's website. They have a fantastic amount of online activities. Their children's room is still open online. They're doing story time, and they are by the day adding more activities. They also have a huge number of resources for online videos and books. I think they're also even doing book groups online. So please go check out the website. If you either don't have a library card or yours isn't working, if you go to the website, you can see how to contact them to get everything up and running. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Herman.
The Parks and Trees Committee had their first virtual meeting, and they heard a lot about where we are in terms of the budget, and it certainly could affect some of the plans that they had for spring planting. They are quite disappointed that we have had to cancel our Arbor Day festivities, and they have suggested that we schedule an Arbor Day for the fall.
Definitely.
The feeling is unanimous from all of those on the committee, as you would expect. Now more than ever, we need to pay attention to the trees in the village and continue to plant. And if we're going to miss a season, the spring season in terms of planting, then we need to double down if we can, budget allowing in the fall. And that's it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to jump back in a little bit with an additional report, which I was remiss at the beginning. I talked about how our first priority is the health of our residents and of our village staff. But, of course, we've been thinking a lot about the general health of the village, partly talking about the budget this evening. But the situation with our local businesses is really very dire. And I want to explain that for the vast majority who are completely shut down, they continue to have expenses, but they have no revenue. You probably have all seen in the news lately that the funds for loans that were to go to small businesses have been depleted. Most of our small businesses did not get far enough through the application process to receive anything. I would have to say the vast majority of them are in that same boat. There are lots of reports, the Washington Post and others, the Wall Street Journal came out talking about the types of businesses that did receive these loans, primarily large companies with established relationships and lines of credit with the lending institutions who were tasked with receiving and approving the applications. So hopefully the Congress will approve additional funds for this. Also, hopefully they will write in some changes which will make sure that some of this money makes it to the real small businesses of this country, the type that line every main street, all over the place and that are really, really key to the fabric of our community and many others. These are the businesses that, you know, they sponsor our little leagues. They're there every time we need help with an event. They you know us, we know them. They're just so important to Larchmont feeling like Larchmont, to paraphrase Trustee Finelli. So all we can do, we've been trying to provide assistance and information to them for whatever help we can find, but what we can do as residents, if a business is open, like a restaurant, order, get takeout, get delivery. They have curbside pickup. It's very safe. Put your mask on, go over, pay by Venmo, pay by whatever methodology they'll take, credit card over the phone, and get an order. Our hardware store is open. Our liquor stores are open. Our corner stores are open. Our delis are open. Please shop and patronize in a safe way. It's very possible. For those who are not open, many of them have an online presence. Please go to their websites. You can order by email. You can call them up and place an order. They will deliver it to you. Also, you can buy gift certificates, which can be redeemed when they reopen in the glorious days that we look forward to, hopefully in June or July. You've got to support them now, because if you wait until they reopen, guess what? They may not. So please, any way that you can think of and in any amount that you're comfortable with, please support our local businesses.
Maybe speaking of our local businesses, yesterday I got a call from one of the managers, Yanni, of Ore Gourmet.
Mm-hmm.
They've been closed down. He called me to offer a lot of food. He wanted to donate it to the food pantry. So
wonderful
example of how our community really comes to the rescue of all of us.
Yes, and many of them have been supplying food to some of the projects that are delivering meals to the hospitals. So even in these, and I think that Mancino Tailors, Tony Mancino and one of his other employees were sewing masks, you know, even in, you know, their hardest times, they're continuing to be part of the community and give back. So this is just really, really important. Now, we'll move on to number 6. And so we move to the administrator, which is the report on the proposed MS4 stormwater report. Dazzle us.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I get to this annual task, I just want to take a moment to thank the board for being very supportive. We've had to make a lot of changes on the fly in order to comply with the various executive orders and still trying to maintain operations because there are still things happening by the village government, and we've been all together in this situation, and we've been adapting daily. So from the village staff, thank you for supporting us, and for me to village staff, not just police and fire, who, you know, goes without saying what they do day in and day out. We really appreciate the sacrifice and the efforts that they've been putting forward, but all of the departments that continue to provide service to the residents. Our water department is here daily, making sure that we have safe, clean drinking water to the residents. The Department of Public Works continues to maintain our streets, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, roads, and open spaces, and through precautions, but they've been here through and through. And all the other village staff here in Village Hall that either are on a rotating schedule or working from home or coming in at night to do things so that they have their own social distancing. You name it, we've got it. We've got dedicated people. We've got really smart, creative staff that will do what it takes to get the job done. I get phone calls from people on the weekends with a new idea they want to roll out, and we do it. And thank you for that. And thank you to everyone that has been supporting us. It's just a couple of notes before I get to the MS4. Thank you to everyone for paying your water bill. We've been receiving water bill payments now since the bills went out. We put a little reminder on there that we do have an online payment system. We have about 1/3 of all water customers using that online portal. So that's really good. It saves staff time. It saves on everything. It's a huge win for everyone. So please continue to use that online portal. We'll make it available, and we've been here to triage the few problems that folks run into either by phone or email. We'll get a turnaround very quickly. Turtle Park intersection, otherwise known as, well, it's Palmer and Hall, otherwise known as Turtle Park intersection, nearing completion. We should be done this week. Again, the board supported a change out there. We brought some talent together between the county and some outside engineers. One of our local contractors that we do work with regularly work with us to do basically a public-private partnership to utilize some village staff and equipment. And he used his technical experience to get the job done at a very low cost, comparatively speaking. I mean, probably about half of what it would have cost if we had just gone out to a regular bid process. So really much appreciated there. And what an improvement. I mean, I've been going by daily, and you can see the traffic flow is already starting to change. It's easier to get in and out of that area. Cars are coming into the neighborhood much more slowly than they used to do, particularly off of northbound Palmer. So overall, I think we're going to have a huge success going forward. A very nice capstone project. And for Parks and Trees, certainly a place that will have a room for some street trees and some benches into the future. So good things there.
I
And
can't
for
wait.
Trustee Froman, maybe a new welcome to Larchmont sign.
Yeah, it's definitely calling for something.
Already on it.
Nice garden. We do have water there. So now the MS4. Every year we do this report. What this pertains to is our stormwater. It's a municipal. Let me pull up the acronym. What's nice about being at the desk, I can cheat and look at the computer very quickly. Municipal separate storm sewer systems, and basically what that is our sanitary is separate from our stormwater. So the road, from the rainwater that collects off the roadway, sweeps into a series of catch basins and through pipes and out to eventually Long Island Sound, or a few of the creeks that eventually lead to the Long Island Sound, in order to handle our stormwater. And New York State DEC, the same folks who are helping us with our charging grant potentially, run this program. And this is really to ensure the quality of the water that leaves the village and then goes into open bodies of water. And what they do as part of this permit is this report. And every year we have to report on our minimum control measures. And what that basically is there's 6 components of stormwater protection. It has to do with what we do to clean our catch basins and maintain the system, what we do to regulate construction activities so that runoff of untreated soil does not wash into our catch basins and our drainage systems, thereby polluting the clean water. Has to do with what we do to catch and protect against illicit discharges. Folks who may want to dump barrels of product that's harmful or hazardous into the storm sewer system. So how we educate our employees, how we educate the public to spot things that may not be good for the storm sewer system, to then report them to the village so we can take some action. We do programs about advising people not to throw dog waste and other litter down the catch basins. It's not just a garbage pail, it serves a water quality purpose. So in that, we put this report together, and it's on our website. And the purpose of my speech tonight is to, number one, let people know we do all these things and that they should be aware of it. That this report is on the website for review. It's normally available at the clerk's office for review, but we scanned it. It's on the website under stormwater. It's under stormwater. Let's see, stormwater management program, and it's under 2020 proposed MS4 report. So if you click that, you can read through some of the things we do, how many miles of road we sweep a year, how much tons of material we remove, and if can you hear a note that my connection's unstable.
You're going in and out a little bit, but we catch basically.
Well, I'm pretty much at the end. So just for anyone who's interested, log into the village's website, Stormwater Management, and you can review the report. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me here at Village Hall. I'm here daily. The main number, 834-6230, or you can shoot an email to villageclerk@villageoflarchmont.org. That concludes my report. Next month, hopefully we'll have it up for adoption.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well
Next up, number 7, resolutions set at previous work sessions, and we set the public hearing for the proposed law to amend the planning board law, which we adopted earlier. So There you have it.
Um,
Number 8 is to hear those persons who wish to address the board. And is there anyone else out there in TV land who wishes to address the board? Steve Lipkin has
Yes,
raised
hi.
his hand. Hi, Steve.
Hi, who is that person that was put onto the committee? I think her name was Maine, the last name, the environmental committee, that was it.
Oh,
Alana Murray?
Huh?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Alana Murray.
Oh, Alana Murray, Alana
I believe it's Alanna, and then the
NNA.
last name is Murray, Murray.
And what were the 3 lots that they were going to put electric chargers in? I just got 1 or 2.
The proposed locations, Steve,
Yes.
are the Addison Street lot,
Addison Street lot, okay.
right? Went Avenue West,
When DT Avenue West, okay.
right? And the third one is on the street. It's across from Village Hall on Larchmont Avenue.
Oh, Larchmont Avenue. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.
I see Michael Gottfried has his hand up, but I'm not sure. Can you unmute Michael Gottfried for a comment, please, Rob?
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Hi, Michael, did you have something at this point to address the board, or is that an old hand raise?
Oh, that's an old hand raise, but
Okay.
while I have you here, Mayor, I just wanted to add my
Had to ask.
yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add my my commendation to Trustee Finelli's commendation and all your commendation for Caitlin. She really was. It's a pleasure. It was truly a pleasure to see a young advocate pull this all together in a few months, and you know, we should be proud of Mamaroneck High School for giving the opportunities to young advocates like that. She did a great job, and you know, thank you all for the opportunity to work with her and to present to you.
Thank you. It's true. When you see someone
And I
like that,
promise, Trustee Fromm, and that's it for me tonight.
thank you. When you see a young person like that, it makes you feel a little more positive about what the future might bring.
Getting old,
I
absolutely.
think they have a good head on their shoulders, the people in Caitlin's generation. So that's it for persons who wish to address the board. I will check one more time and see if there are any other hands raised. No? Okay, so last up would be number 9, approve the minutes of the meetings. We have the minutes from the Board of Trustees regular meeting of March 18th. That would be only myself, Trustee Finelli, and Trustee Herman who could vote on that. So it'll be easy. I seek a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 18th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
You have
Carol,
to unmute yourself.
you're muted. We can't
Unmute.
hear you.
I
There we
got
go.
I got
Okay.
I got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good. Thank you. And then we have the minutes of the work session held on March 9th and the work session held on April 6th. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. That's it. We're finished. I'm going to thank everyone for participating and for making this as painless as possible. Thank you to all the participants who came on to comment and ask questions. Thank you to LMC TV for making this Zoom meeting possible as a live broadcast. Remember, this will be has been recorded and will be rebroadcast on LMC TV's cable channels. And minutes of this meeting will also be prepared, as they always are for all meetings. And they will be ready for the public as soon as they are approved at a subsequent meeting. I seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe, stay well.
Travel well.
Bye.